Welcome back to Quick Cuts. Owners aren't asking for another dashboard. They're asking why, decades into building automation deployment, is still so slow, fragile, and expensive. And the reality is that the mid market, the small and mid sized buildings where most people work, has been left behind. Today, we'll explore whether AI can finally change that, not by dumbing down complex systems, but by making them accessible to the people who run them daily. From the promise of a zero interface building to the reality of what AI is and isn't ready to do, we'll look at whether deployment can finally match the scale of the problem. Today, my guest is Deep Singh, founder and CEO of 75F, who's rethinking how buildings get deployed, managed, and improved at scale. Let's get into it. Welcome to the Climate Gap Quick Cuts, a podcast for busy people building climate solutions. We spotlight founders, builders, operators, and investors doing the hard work behind real progress. I'm Ben, co-founder of Element 6. We connect climate tech companies with the people who make scale possible. Let's get into it. Deep, welcome to the show. Could you kick us off with an intro to you and your background?
Yeah, thanks for having me here. I'm Deep. I'm the founder CEO of 75F. We do vertically integrated IoT-based building controls. Right? This is my sixth startup. I've always been in startups, but this is the first time I've actually come into this domain. I'm normally a networking, Cisco, Juniper kind of a guy.
Right.
Always doing high-speed backhauls and stuff. My claim to fame is that at one point I had one of the world's first terabit routers sitting in my garage, and at which point Bill Gates is one of our investors, and I joke with him, my garage heater was more expensive than his garage heater at that point.
That's not a bad dinner table story. I like that. Okay, I would like to start and dig into a little bit of why deployments still stall. You said that smaller buildings aren't just scaled down thermostats. Why do deployments in this mid-market space so often stumble, even when the technology is solid?
Yeah, it's an interesting observation. And you talked about this, and I think you hit the nail on the head. People keep thinking that smaller buildings are less complex, and they may be individually, but not as an aggregate. The problem is that there's a huge amount of diversity in terms of the kind of topologies and the kind of equipment that people end up putting in. Right, so you can't just, most of these mid-sized buildings, and we're talking, when we say mid-sized buildings, we're talking of buildings maybe in the region of about 2,000 square meters, which would be 20,000 square feet, up to about 200,000 square feet, which would be about 20,000 square meters, right, for you folks in Europe.
Yeah, thanks.
So they're a little bit, so they're not really small buildings, but they're what we call mid-sized buildings, right? And in those buildings, you're not really having very simple thermostats. The topology is not quite simple. What's happened is that each area that you go to geographically ends up having a slightly different set of engineering specs, driven primarily around climate and what the equipment was available, right? So each of those buildings will have different specs, different ways of running those pieces of equipment. So the overall complexity in aggregate across all these different types of buildings, across wide amounts of geographies, tends to be quite diverse, right? It is quite more complex than people would think that, oh, can I just put in a simple thermostat, right? Which is, and one of the things which ends up happening is people take that, why can't I just take a BMS, which is meant for a very large, complex custom job, and put it into these buildings? But the issue is always the ROI, right?
Yeah.
Are you going to be able to find, because building controls are like Lego blocks. They're very, very flexible. You can do a whole lot of ton of things with them, but you need that Lego master to come in and make a custom solution for every building, right? And that may work fine if you're in the JP Morgan building or you're having the Barclays Tower, but it's really hard to justify that kind of expertise and expense when you have a building which is only like 2,000 square meters, right? 20,000 square feet. The overall cost is it just doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
Right. So there's this, to me, that's, I think the key thing is that they're not just dumbed down buildings. You can't just consider them that way. And you can't apply those same solutions which are over-engineered for those larger buildings.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Well, let's look into the role of AI in fixing some of that fragility. Where does AI genuinely help here, do you think? Is it about simplifying workflows for operators or improving commissioning or something else entirely?
That's a really good question. So many people will think like AI is like, can AI run my building? right?
Yeah.
And I personally don't think that AI is this one ginormous thing that's going to do everything. What I think of AI is a bunch of tools that help different users, different types of personas do their job more efficiently, right? I don't think we are at a stage yet where we have true artificial general intelligence to the point that it is going to take over everyone's work and do it more efficiently than the experts that we have currently. The place where we are at is that AI is a very good assistant to help you do things better
Yeah.
than your dumbest people, right? That's how I think about it. Or more importantly, empowering your regular people to do the skills that they normally are not proficient in. If you're going to empower a secretary, you don't can't expect her to be a building management system guru as well, right? But you don't have those dedicated facility managers. You don't have the concept of a boiler Bob to run the building in these mid-sized buildings. So you're really going to have to ask the users who are in the building to take on those personas, those jobs. But you can't expect them to be traded up, like learn a trade specifically for what is a small building or mid-sized building. What you can do is perhaps ask them to interact with an agent AI, which is like an intern, which will act on their behalf, right? So what we are doing is we are embedding AI in pretty much every single facet of the product that of the building that we are working on. So the concept we think of is this concept of what we call a zero interface BMS, right? So you should
Okay.
never really need to have to learn how to use a building management system, but in fact interact with the building itself through its agent, which
Got it.
is live, conversational, contextually aware.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. You've previously used the phrase zero interface building just now to
Yeah.
describe where this could head. Could you unpack that a little bit more? What does it look like when people interact with their buildings, like they talk to an assistant instead of through another screen? Is there a way you can give us a deeper dive?
Absolutely, and I'd be happy to actually show you a live demo as well. I think I'm a big fan of doing things live, and perhaps we'll do that separately, right?
Yep.
But one of the key things that we think of is that when we're doing this zero interface BMS, it is truly a chat interface. Whether it's multimodal in that sense that you can talk to it, or you can actually type into this,
Yeah.
right? But it is, so we call it Saffron AI in our case. It's an agent-based system which you can inspect what's going on in the building. You can explore that. You can ask it to analyze and say things like, "What's the worst indoor room with the worst indoor air quality? Show me the rooms which are above set point." Right. So simple things that you would normally have to do some kind of analysis on, it can do those things, or it can actually act to say like, "I want to change the desired temperature in my room to 23 degrees Celsius for till 5 p.m. or till the end of the day," right? So these are kind of simple commands that you would normally interact with, or you can actually give me an energy analysis, what's wrong with my building. So there's a fair amount of power that you can actually do. You can incorporate multiple levels, layers of um, outcomes with this simple agentic AI. And where we have taken this is that we have this concept of lang chain. So what we call it is we have a concept of what's called a large language model, an LLM that understands your language, but then it actually parses off the tasks to very small agentic AIs that are highly specialized, right? Because what we found is that one large AI doesn't have the discrimination, doesn't have the fidelity to act coherently and consistently on each of these tasks, right? We keep hearing that with AI, there's a lot of hallucinations, right? What you want to cut down is on the hallucinations. And the way you do that is by having baby AIs, which are really specific and task oriented so that they don't actually mistake one outcome for another, right? So they're highly focused.
Does AI replace human expertise? Do you see a world where you've compared it to spell check for operators rather than a complete replacement? If you put your glasses on and think of the future, how do you see this playing out in practice uh, in the next 12, 18 months?
I think in the 12, 18 months, I think we're still very close in and reality. And I don't think AI is going to go to the point that it is going to be better than the best of our experts.
Yeah,
Again,
sure.
what it's getting at is, I think, incrementally getting better at being better than the worst of those people, right? So what you're really doing is raising the floor rather than raising the ceiling at this point, is how I
Yeah,
think about it, right?
yeah,
So, and it's empowering in that regard. Like, we talked about spell check before, as you said, right? Like we would not use a text editor anymore, which didn't have spell check, or if it didn't have grammar functions built into it, right? We was like, oh my God, this is so crazy. I don't even think I know the spellings of many words anymore because of autocomplete going on all the time. And
Yeah.
it's not like that is taken away from my sense of writing material or my sense of thinking, but it has definitely helped me be faster and be more consistent in the outcomes that I have, right? So those things in our world, this is how I think in the 12 to 18 months, this short term period, I do believe we are thinking our AI is going to be an assistant that helps you do your tasks better, more efficiently, rather than something that is completely replacing the experts in the field.
Yeah. Uh, Not completely related, but I do worry about what LLMs will messages to loved ones on cards, notes to
Yeah.
people. I just feel like there's just going to be this time in a few years where people just forget that sort of shorthand,
Yes.
those little notes. Because as you say, it's so easy for you just to plug in and say, help me write this prompt. So yeah, it is. I have to challenge myself sometimes to deliberately not use those LLMs for things like that.
It's interesting you mentioned that. You know, the whole thing is like I didn't have time to write a short note, so I wrote you a long one.
Yeah,
Right? So similarly, uh, it's I think 2 Valentines ago, I actually asked GPT to Chat GPT to write a cheesy poem for my wife.
yeah.
Right, so she knew that it was actually written by AI. So I think, but
How did that go down?
uh, as you would expect.
Yeah, yeah, I
Deep
can imagine.
did not share in the wine that night. So
Not again. No, well, maybe it's learned more about your style
not
since
much.
then. All right, sorry. Getting back to AI and setting realistic expectations, how should owners and operators reset their expectations of AI? Is the goal to, like you said, match their best engineer or raise the floor, or even less experienced teams can get better outcomes? Because I want us to improve those outcomes and understand what real progress looks like from years from now.
Yeah. I think AI, as it stands now, allows us to be more consistent. I think that concept of raising the floor, we will have less aberrations, less drops down. The
Yeah.
threshold is going to be higher overall in general and being more consistent, right? For people who end up adopting AI, of course, I think we'll still have some of those exceptions who choose not to. But that's how I think about it. Like I look at even overall efficiency of a building in terms of both how there's three phases that I think of, right? How a building is going to get installed and commissioned, how a building is going to be operated, and how it delivers on outcomes in terms of comfort or indoor air quality, right? So those are three key vectors that I think that AI can all help in, right? So we think of, as an example, we have a concept of what we call easy street. And what we've done is we've created a huge number of rule sets that, as an example, a normal commissioning agent would actually do.
Right.
So a sophisticated commissioning agent would do. And what it does is it actually runs each piece of equipment, not just looks at raw data, but runs the pieces of equipment through a specific sequence of turning it on and off and basically correlating it with things like temperature changes and damper positions and so on. What's interesting is it then actually takes all of that aggregate data and it's run by AI. So it actually interprets the data and it'll tell you in human readable form what's a punch list. These are the things you need to fix. These are the things that you actually are likely causing these issues, right? And it's all available in multiple languages. So that allows it to take care of some of the nuances that you might have with a workforce that, as an example, might be natively proficient in a different language, right? And especially in Europe, you see a huge amount of these dependencies. So to me, all of those things are a large number of these cases can perhaps be programmed, but it requires a huge amount of programming effort to take care of the long tail, right? These corner edge cases. And what AI allows us to do is to implement all of those corner edge cases relatively cheaply and efficiently without having to actually think of all the separate use cases themselves.
Yeah.
So those are, from my perspective, like Easy Street is one of those pieces. in terms of, we talked a little bit about Saffron, which is
Yeah.
what allows you to interact with the building. There's another pieces that we have actually done, and like even creating dashboards for sustainability people, right? You literally draw, we call it whiteboard to dashboard, or we call it text to chart. You can either draw with your hand, and if you're not so good with drawing with a hand, you can just give it a prompt and say, hey, I want to visualize the indoor air quality metrics in all my zones. And boom, you have a chart that's created, right? So these are things. Can you do these things in a regular BMS? Sure, you can, but do you have to learn the paradigm, the pattern of how things are done? You do. And I don't think the mid-sized buildings, you have people who have the time or the inclination to go ahead and obtain those skills.
Yeah, yeah. I think those are really interesting examples that you walk through from a 75F lens. I wonder, across the sort of segment, mid-sized buildings, are there any other signals that you would, expect that could tell other operators that AI has cracked deployment, or would you think what you've run through are the its capacity at the moment?
I think there are other ones, like good ones are FDD, right? So fall detection and diagnostics, right? That's another piece, or optimization in terms of goal setting, right?
Yeah.
Are you optimizing for energy? Are you optimizing for cost? Are you optimizing for comfort? Because again, those are three orthogonal vectors that you somehow kind of have to reconcile. So those are key pieces that, so I talked about these three. Those are the other vectors that we have seen. We work on those as well. The FDD piece, we work on digital twins that can actually go in and look at the ontology of how the building is created. That's a very strong suite of what we've really been working on, is creating a true digital twin out of the box. Because the key to all of this, and if you were to talk about it, the question is, what is necessary to really bring AI to buildings, right? And I think of three key things, right? So one is your data, clean data, right? That means it can't have noise. The more noise you have, the more analog the signal is, the more it's actually susceptible to interference. As an example, typical DDC systems, even if you're picking up temperature and it's varying, well, it's going to inject a false signal, even if you're going to train the AI on that, right? So you need clean data. You need to have consistent algorithms. So that means all the buildings that you're running in need to be running relatively consistently, so that you can actually make sure that you can pick up exceptions, right? And then you need to tie this all together into a digital twin that actually understands, it's not a flat hierarchy of all the data points, but it basically has what's called an ontology, which shows the representation of how is each piece of equipment or sensor connected to another piece, so that you can actually make sense of the hierarchy, right? So these are, to me, perhaps inherent things that need to occur for us to actually make buildings smarter.
Yeah.
Right. And the moment you do that, I mean, then you have all of these applications that can be laid on top of it to basically build up and make sense of.
Yeah. Well, that's brilliant. Thank you so much, Deep. We've gone from the basement to AI in 15, 16 minutes. Thank you so much for jumping on and giving us some insight to what you're doing at 75F and what you believe where the industry is going to go. So really appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Love talking to you guys. Thank you so much. Cheers.
So that was Deep Singh on why is smart building deployment still so dumb, and can AI finally fix it? Here are some of the key takeaways. 1, raise the floor, not the ceiling. AI isn't replacing experts anytime soon. It's helping everyday operators perform like them. 0 interface buildings. Forget dashboards. Talk to your building through an intelligent agent that understands context and intent. 3, deployment at scale. The challenge isn't necessarily complexity, it's diversity. AI helps standardize across fragmented mid-market systems. 4, clean data and digital twins. Reliable automation depends on structured data, consistent algorithms, and an ontology that connects it all. And 5, assist, don't replace. AI should be the spell check for operations, faster, consistent, and always learning. Thanks for watching Quick Cuts. Short episodes, sharp insights, no filler. Catch you next time. You've been listening to the Climate Gap Quick Cuts. If you're building in climate tech, subscribe to hear more from the people making it happen.